stop trying to layer on so many technologies and go so far into AI that then people don't trust your brand and they're like, wait, what is this weird place that I've entered into and I don't even recognize you anymore, right? People are going 0 to 60, and I would encourage you to take a slower, more calculated approach. First of all, it doesn't sound like you're a Skims consumer, which feels like a miss because they have just launched their menswear line. So we'll get back to that.
VOX Wins. The text bubbles are green because that's the color our money be. Now, I learned so much from each of our guests, but this is the first time I've met someone who dropped so many gems on our research methodology. I'm worried they could take my job at Vox. Today, we're joined by someone who truly fits the full enterprise level of leadership, having mastered end-to-end operations through a career at multiple iconic brands. I'm excited to welcome Jill Gorman Villalobos, Head of Customer Experience Strategy at Samsung, previously at Target, Ulta Beauty, Total Wine, and Vogue magazine, and also one of our strategic advisors. Jill, safe to say my mind was blown when you sat me down and sketched out how digital and physical channels can share data while optimizing different strategies for the SKUs across them, especially with D2C being the key lever and branding as the North Star that guides that system. God knows how we'll cut this down to 20 minutes. So let's start by setting a little bit of context. When we look at today's digital landscape, it seems like someone is on promotion all the time. If you agree with that, then as price dominates brand messaging across a litany of channels and marketplaces, how in the world are you thinking about brand storytelling in this environment?
Well, Rich, first of all, thank you for that. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here and to chat with you. So, great question. And I would say I'm coming to this from both retail experience, as you said, working with many incredible brands within the context of a retail environment, but also the last year I've spent at a D2C premium brand, right? And so certainly promotional strategy, activity, velocity means very different things given those two formats, right? And like you said, both in-store and online, because we have new technology and things have evolved so much the last few years to even target you as a consumer where you are and where you're shopping. And so I'm going to speak more present tense in the confines of my Samsung role, which is very exciting, also very challenging. So consumer electronics, higher price point, right? So my thoughts around promotional strategy, the ways that we think through possibly promoting our products, very, very different than my time, certainly with Target. And we're a premium brand, right? I'm not sure by definition, premium brands tend to promote products actually, right? When you think about some of the Apples of the world, Nike's seldom, promotion, Tesla doesn't promote. I'm naming some of the brands that people have associated with Samsung when they think about our brand and with whom are we kind of adjacent, right? And so we within our D2C channel have been promotional the last several years because this country, post-COVID, most players, again, have been promotionally driven, and it helps to acquire new individuals to learn about your brand, to want to shop with your brand, and especially, again, given the high price point in which we offer our products. And so we have been promotionally savvy, I would say, but we've been trying, especially more recently, to be more tailored in our approach, right? And to be more thoughtful with when and how we promote. And we're leveraging Shop App, which is our app channel, of course, to really promote the right things at the right time, right? I think what you don't want to do, any of us, especially in this economic environment, is just blanket approach. Everything's on promo, 30% off. Now, does that get people's attention? Because it's a very easy message, like you said earlier, the storytelling around promotion. Does that grab your attention? It does, right? But I think I know consumers have gotten much smarter. Why are you promoting to me and why should I care, right? There's been so much saturation. So that for us has been a huge focus, is targeting the right people to try to acquire and using promotions more seldom, but in more targeted and smarter ways.
The complexity is absolutely right. And what I love about your perspective, especially as a full enterprise leader, is how you're blending together. If I can grab 3 key pillars, if it's possible to take your world and summarize it in 3 key pillars.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about storytelling, merchandising, marketing, bringing them together into a thoughtful narrative. Could you explain that lens a little bit more? Because I think it's unique to take someone who sort of focuses on voice of the customer and analytics, but then really sees it to the top of the funnel and the beginning of that user journey as well.
Thank you for bringing it up because actually, it's when I think about what wakes me up every day, what brings me energy, especially given the evolution of the CX space and working to just put forth the best consumer experiences, I find brand marketing, merchandising strategy, and just storytelling to be the unlock. Like you said, mostly top of funnel. However, I think through loyalty, and I'm thinking even media network, right? And I'm thinking marketplace, like there are other avenues that maybe aren't as traditionally top of funnel where you're having again to stop people and make them think and make them excited about the brand or product that you're offering. So I've been fortunate. My early days were in the digital marketing space, working with Walmart. I then did product design and then came back to merchandising. And so getting to blend those verticals in my current role and at my point in my career every day and bringing the marketing and merchandising functions together and driving that synergy is one of my favorite parts, again, of my role, but also just of the experience that I've been fortunate to have. Because if those two verticals work in a silo, which is more typical than it is atypical because most companies, right, that's how they structure them organizationally. There's a CMO, there's a CDO more times than not, right? But when you bring them together, you drive higher revenue gains, acquisition, repeat rate, you name it. And I've seen that firsthand. And I think that, again, is what motivates me and makes me excited about continuing down that path because I think we've only scratched the surface, many of us, right? Because a consumer, think about all the shopping channels that exist now that we didn't have 1, 2, 5 years ago, right? You expect within that external channel when you're excited about a Samsung message or a new product that we've just launched, which by the way, we just launched a lot of incredible new products. You then land on the site or the app and you expect that through line, that synergy, that personalization to come through within that merchandising experience, right?
I'd love to take that model and look at a case study. Past casual conversations between us, we talked a lot about what Nike is doing, as an example that you brought up.
Yeah.
Their recent collaboration with Skims comes to mind as something that really has opened up new markets for both brands. Now, I'm a layman and I can just observe the cultural partnerships that have driven their sneaker line, which might be existing right here off camera. But what's your perspective on these strategic alignments cross brands? And what makes them successful?
Yeah, and it is funny. You and I jumped on the phone, and that was the biggest story of the moment some weeks ago. And still, the buzz is buzzing because all were privy to where Nike has been struggling recently. Right, it's been a very, very public narrative. They then ushered in their new CEO, which is hugely exciting for them. And obviously, Skims has been on an upward trajectory, celebrity founded brand. And so it has all of the makings of a very splashy, very theoretically lucrative and long-standing partnership, right? It has kind of the America wants to see a comeback story, right, moment, and then the sexy intimates angle. Like it hits all the things. And so for that reason alone, you could argue it's very smart. Also, the two are going after unique but also similar generational consumer demographics, right? And so there's an unlock to be had there. And then each brands bring totally different things to the table. So in my heart, strategic partnerships, I've been really excited to be on the peripheral of seeing, yes, Nike Skims come to life, but I've also been fortunate to be a part of several partnerships as well. And so Instacart at Total Wine, Shipped with Target, Ulta Beauty with Target. We're doing a lot of cool things at Samsung, Formula One racing, the Olympics last year, right? So I've seen strategic partnerships unlock things that no other singular brand has been able to touch, right? And so I'm a huge believer of them. But it takes, if I had to pinpoint one thing as to what makes them successful to your question, it's around extremely thoughtful and granular alignment at the onset of your partnership, right? It can be on paper the coolest, smartest, oh, this will work, but in reality, the followers is a part of the new buzz that you like, right? Who gains long term and short term? And those conversations aren't easy and they are hard to navigate. And everyone has, again, different things they bring to the table, different objectives, different wants and needs. So I've been privy to a lot of those conversations and it's fascinating, right? And I've again, seeing a lot of wins, and people's partnership strategies also crumble at the same token. And I also think digital and e-commerce retail, you could plan something really, really, really well and have that alignment too. And then you never know what's going to change. Things are so dynamic. So you have to be on your toes, and you have to be able to come to deal with what comes your way.
I'm seeing a great opportunity for brands to get into new markets and new types of buyers, especially ones who, I love Nike for some athletic wear, mostly sneakers, but very different than what Skims can do, and I think it offers a evolution for them as well to get into new markets. But if you're thinking about new buyers and maybe now creating these new SKUs, how do you maintain brand identity either to your existing buyers who are like, oh, these are new opportunities to me, or buyers who have never really heard of you before?
It's a great question. First of all, it doesn't sound like you're a Skims consumer, which feels like a miss because they have just launched their menswear line. So we'll get back to that. Right. So a partnership is so multifaceted depending on the model you choose. So I'll use Ulta Beauty at Target as an example. And then I'll come back to maybe Nike and Skims, right? That was an omni-channel partnership, right? So to your question around how do you brand and maintain the brand equity within your partnership, in-store, the store-in-store format and experience that we drove in Target stores, but the Ulta brand, a lot of investment went into store signage and fixtures, and we had store associates and consultants who were able to stand there and help you pick out the perfect foundation, right? Or moisturizer. And so my argument is that investment in store drove, I think, incredible brand, continued equity, awareness, joy for the Ulta brand. The complexity there too is, think about it, it's Target store. Ulta is the retailer that houses then like 50 plus premium brands. So there's a lot of brandedness that has to come through within that environment. And then you think the digital piece, again, what we did was we worked to ensure there was a lot of good branded destinations, both for Ulta, but also what we did was we tiered the brands, not only based by revenue of how much revenue they theoretically bring within the partnership, but who do we think the biggest brands would drive awareness to this Ulta at Target partnership, right? So Mac Beauty, as an example, arguably brought in some of the biggest revenue, right? But actually, it's the niche and the indie players who, through social and otherwise, would bring in, again, awareness, traffic, buzz, And so that was where, again, digitally, we thought about how do we brand this accordingly, still giving Ulta that branded equity, but also leaning into the actual beauty products themselves and brands.
Your example, I could talk about shoes and we could do an entire episode on shoes and the Kardashians, but I'm much more interested about your experience. Yeah, right. Yeah. Welcome for part B. But your experience thinking about, you mentioned Omni and now in this new marketplace and having to be strategic with who is featured and who takes part in this collaboration, but making sure that you align all these different stories. I would have to imagine that brands struggle with maintaining a consistent narrative across different journeys. You think about large marketplaces where you're just dropped onto your item from search and you're sort of confined with that UI. How can leaders create that cohesive story that works across social, email, website, physical, and now third-party marketplaces as well?
It's a great question. And it goes back to some of my comments around organizational structure, shared objectives and KPIs of teams like, to your point, product design, social marketing, merchandising, brand marketing, right? So those teams have to be unified as to what is the goal. Is it to drive, yes, continued brand awareness at the ideal state, absolutely, across endless channels. And I know that seems rudimentary, but I actually promise you, not all companies get that done well, right? Or they don't invest in kind of laying that foundation again at the onset of a partnership. But then I think just from the product standpoint, branding is probably, that's the singular way to ensure that through all these channels, your message is coming across. What is this product? What is the branding of this product? How do you lean into one brand versus the other or try to maintain that equitable approach? So I would say most probably try to focus on what is that shared product, because you can ensure that through all the channels, that will be your constant, right? And so through imagery and storytelling, whether it's in influencer marketing, right? Or the product landing page, like that will be your constant.
Exactly. Considering how they're coming in, and would post sale make sense as well? Are you able to connect to that marketplace customer of yours? Probably email, loyalty,
Yes.
I don't know, warranty, perhaps
Yep.
some reason to engage with us further.
There are endless ways to engage post purchase, which I think is where not enough focus actually, and I'm glad you brought it up, comes into play for partners who are very focused on top of funnel to conversion checking out. So I would argue that's probably the area actually to continue, because one sale is great. You want two sales. And then from there, you see hopefully the reoccurring behavior. I've been really impressed with what some of the, again, equitable landing destinations and strategies have looked like, so that you're not just getting an email that says, "Great, Jill, thanks for buying the Skims at Nike hoodie. See more on Nike.com," right? Skims is not going to love that, nor should they, right? But I've seen some really interesting landing destinations or kind of shared shops where they're like, check out the remaining collection. Yes. Or to your point, sign up for warranty and get 10% off either of these brands as a next purchase. So people have got to really come together and unify again to drive continued sales. And then you measure and you learn from it, like what brand is getting more excitement or awareness within that kind of landing destination, and then you kind of continue to iterate and pivot.
Interesting. So the goal then is, say, hey, marketplace is a channel, and we're going to use it and try to get revenue, but ideally let that just be the first touch points, and we really need to bring the customer into our ecosystem.
That would be the goal.
Let's talk a little bit about how we measure success in storytelling, a little bit into metrics and data. So beyond the immediate sales, how do you evaluate whether your brand's narrative is actually resonating with consumers?
It is hard, and marketers have a really, really unique challenge to say, is my storytelling resonating? More importantly, is it driving sales and conversion? Because there is an accurate argument that you're not always going to get it in and of it in that moment, right? Someone will need to think about it, especially something like a $3,000 refrigerator. That's my unique Samsung example, right? But not everyone's ready to purchase at that point in time, right? They're going around, they're educating themselves. What's the perfect fridge for me? Will this fit in my kitchen? Does it have AI in it? Which is obviously we do, right? But there's so much cognitive decision making. There are these companies out there who say, great, look at Samsung brand in the North American market through your marketing efforts, through your merchandising efforts, through your email strategy, loyalty, post-purchase. What are people saying about you in social media, on Reddit, God forbid, in the Washington Post, right? Like it gets snippets across ratings and reviews on your actual website. Like it takes an analysis of the current industry stance in which you sit, consumer sentiment in that point in time. And I think that is such an unlock, because truly, like you said, a lot of us do struggle with, wow, is that storytelling beyond click-through rate and engagement and yes, conversion and continuation and all that? What's kind of the long-term play, or even the sentiment that's gathered within that point in time?
It would seem to make a lot of sense that the best vendor can help you gain as close to first party data as you could when they're going to be on someone else's website, someone else's marketplace.
Yes.
And then once they get into your world, then you can really just measure it yourself. Jill, having worked with such iconic brands, I'd love to hear a hot take or a bold prediction you have about the future of consumer experience that might surprise your industry peers.
Uh-oh, hot take time. Gird your loins. Let's see. I actually think there's a lot of overcomplication that a lot of companies and executives take on when it just boils down to what is a good consumer experience, right? I think at the end of the day, consumers want to have confidence in that you're offering a quality product. They want to feel uniquely that you're speaking to them, that you see them, and that they are worthwhile to you. You're not just a transaction. And then I think they want the wherewithal or the authority to be able to, after they've had an interaction with you or they've experienced what you have to offer, they then can make a choice to come back, right? Or where they continue to navigate towards. So I think if you can nail those fundamentals, right, all else is really a nice to have. But I see a lot of companies, brands, probably just taking it too far, and then they're losing a lot of certainly investment financially short term, but long term, their brand equity and status might deteriorate, right? And that's the last thing any of us obviously can afford in such a saturated industry. Again, nail those fundamentals, like, are the right things in stock? Is your merchandising strategy and the products that you offer feeling compelling? Do people feel like they want to continue to shop and navigate your in-store experience? Because they have a lot they could choose from. So I would just say nail the fundamentals and stop trying to layer on so many technologies and go so far into AI that then people don't trust your brand and they're like, wait, what is this weird place that I've entered into and I don't even recognize you anymore, right? People are going 0 to 60, and I would encourage you to take a slower, more calculated approach.
That's really illuminating to me, right? Because why should AI be part of that brand identity? Not everyone should be the tech company that a Samsung is. And Vox being an AI company ourselves, I think you've converted me. I think that's a really, really good point.
Humans unlock AI, AI unlocks humans, Rich. That is the tattoo I think we'll both have with time.
Of course, the issue at heart of Vox are leader preferences for how and when they work with vendors. So, Jill, what are early signs that you look for in vendors, and how should vendors support leaders like you in navigating industry challenges?
Love this. And I have been fortunate, especially recently, to come in contact with a lot of incredible, not only vendors themselves, but also communities that foster ongoing kind of client vendor or brand retail vendor partnerships. Listening and learning. And I think this is where obviously Vox, I was so enthralled with what y'all are doing, right? It's about listening, analyzing, taking with a grain of salt, right? But then bringing together various points of view into unified learnings. Vendors that I've met in past, who I will not name right now, who I think have done it wrong, right? They skip to they jump to solutions, they jump to conclusions, they make assumptions, right? And so many times it's been like, I don't need that, or I don't want that, or actually that has nothing to do with what I just said to you, right? There's no parallel. And it's just them selling a service. And I would say, be careful, right? Because I think a lot of us hopefully are smarter than we might let on, and it really comes across as not authentic and not genuine, right? It comes across as a sales tactic. But I've recently seen so many incredible companies who have really invested the time and the energy to hear what I'm working on. Yes, what are the challenges and what are the problems that I've yet to unlock, but I'm desperate and they're top of my wish list, right? And to make long-term connections and form those long-term connections. It all is really dependent, unfortunately, with kind of the individual, even in that role, right? Or at that company, how they kind of play things. It can boil down to that, and that could damn you long term. So I would say just be authentic and listen and learn. And I would just add, especially in the context of Shop Talk where things are busy and you're meeting endless vendors, either through hosted meetings or at the content, and you're sitting next to each other in the audience, at the happy hours that are sponsored, at the dinners, right? Like it's like endless community, to your point, and either it sparks or it does not, okay? And so the other advice I would give is be very clear at how you're differentiating yourself as a vendor from others, especially in this world of AI where everyone is an agentic chatbot, right? And it's not remotely accurate 90, I think, percent of the time, right? But it's just humans will lose interest if we're not clear what sets you apart, what makes you different, what do you bring to the table that others don't. And so again, that goes into like sales strategy, storytelling, niche and narrative, and just how do you compel people? It's not easy. I won't pretend that it is, but that would be where ideally people could really level up, is through differentiating themselves.
Right on. Yeah, and also shout out to all the GPT rappers out there calling themselves AI companies.
God bless. I'll just leave it.
Good luck.
Leave it at that. So
let's shift our focus to D2C strategies. Samsung, like many major brands, sells through multiple channels, including your own D2C platform, along with major retailers like Amazon and Walmart. How do you think about the role of your D2C channel in this ecosystem?
we should be, if we're doing our job well, the heartbeat of all that is your ability to buy a Samsung product in North America, right? So we are the hub in the wheel, truly, right? You should look to our website and our app as the most accurate, the most compelling, the most inspirational and educational touch point for the Samsung brand, right? So Best Buy, you named it, Walmart, Costco, Amazon, of course they work hard, as we talked earlier, to ensure our brand in the context of their retail environments, right, is coming through authentically and accurately and what have you. At the end of the day, they're servicing endless brands. And I know exactly what that's like and how it feels, right? And so it's impossible to do, especially for a premium brand, right, with the utmost kind of care and ongoing maintenance, right? It's one thing to launch an experience, launch a partnership, and you're like, oh my God, this landing destination, the creative we made to drive the partnership and the storytelling, whatever. And then a month goes by and a month goes by and a month goes by, and no one touches it. And the consumer's like, all right, well, this other brand and retailer, whatever, is doing it really well. And they're refreshing and it feels relevant and seasonally on par and just speaking to me, right? And so ultimately our D2C channel is where you come to educate again yourself on what are our products, why are they different, why should you choose us versus others. But then we should also be telling you what are the multi-product stories again to drive value and ease in your lifestyle. Our smart things capability, like that's second to none, right? Like we offer that and only us and us alone. And so we're able to tell you that story uniquely and without any other clutter or distraction of other brands in our D2C channel. Also, they benefit. There's a lot of peace of mind, statistically speaking, in you purchasing through a D2C channel. Consumers have said time and time again, I trust D2C channel because I know if something goes wrong with my product, especially again, consumer electronics, high price point, I can call and I can get service and I can get help. If you buy through Best Buy, which is great, and we hope you do, obviously, you might think promotional first, right? And that's certainly true. However, again, statistically, consumers aren't confident in going back to Best Buy in a year or two if your refrigerator has an issue, right? So that is high level where I think a D2C channel not only has benefit, but where we have a lot of responsibility. You can't mess that up. You got to be accurate, again, and authentic. And we hold a lot of weight to that at Samsung.
Now, Jill, you can execute different channel-specific strategies, but imagine you'll first want to integrate your digital and physical data. So how are you approaching unified data merging while managing compliance issues?
Yeah, it's challenging. And I think this is a problem to solve across the industry because not only do you want to merge your sets of data so that you can have the total holistic omni view, but you want to merge the right data and you want to clean that data and ensure that data then, right, can be leveraged across the organization in a way that drives efficiency, certainly drives problem solving, and then drives better optimized outcomes. And so we're thinking about it a lot. Like I said, like our peers are, I think Samsung is unique because we have very few store formats in the US, right? So there's really a handful of those experiential stores. And so certainly there's a lot of great data around the consumers who shop within that experience. And then we have our data from the digital platforms, but then we have our retail partners, right? So Best Buy, Amazon, Walmart, Costco, Lowe's, Home Depot, etc. That's challenging, right? To map in a cohesive view when it is a singular brand, but you're in a more noisy retail environment, right? Versus with a Target as another example, there's a brick and mortar lens and then there's the digital lens and it's one retailer brand and then you merge all of the things together. And I've seen a lot of great successes in years past where we've done that well, drove a lot of loyalty and just broader acquisition longer term for the company through that merging. So it's hugely important. Everyone should be thinking about it, but it's no easy feat.
And great to be adaptable for the customers who are going to be shopping for products, buy online, pick up in store, ship from store. Your world sounds entirely complex, and this is a unique challenge for you to solve. And in fact, on that topic, in-store pickup has really become a significant part of the retail landscape. So how do you see BOPIS partnerships evolving, perhaps complementing digital-only SKUs?
I see an exciting evolution on the BOPIS front, given where I think the industry and even at Samsung, we've seen the consumer really lean into wanting their items with urgency, right? Think about moments like a Super Bowl, Black Friday, like consumers are like, oh my God, I want that television and the sound bar, and I want it by Sunday, and it's Thursday, right? And so there is a need. There is the aspect that our products are larger in size than other retailers or brands, and so that comes with its own impact. But I've heard incredible stories of guys showing up with their big pickup trucks and they are loading in these 98-inch televisions, right? Or whatever, crazy stuff. So my point is the consumer need and want is very much there, even in a very challenging and maybe non-traditional space like a consumer electronics. So I think the partnership angle is really important, and it's fun from okay, the retailers can enable, right? Because again, we don't have a lot of stores on our own. They can enable that urgency lens, that pickup in store. We have everything in stock. SKUs are not a problem, right? Inventory. But then on the Samsung side, what we can do is add kind of that further layer because, right, we integrate, yeah, you can go pick up at Best Buy on our D2C channel. Hey, Rich, like you're a loyal consumer with us because we know that about you, and you should deserve nothing but the best Super Bowl experience this year. And so here's kind of that incremental promotional play, loyalist points as a part of purchasing this new television. But then you mentioned exclusive SKUs, right? That's also an area where we can play a unique role D2C and provide some exclusive items on our platform and then perhaps sell them through other retailers. So there's a world of opportunity and consumers are really interested in it. So we're excited to continue to see what it could do for us.
Yeah, I love that. Making it so the Samsung experience, that brand identity can follow you no matter where you go. I get lots of benefits from the storytelling that are unique to, your direct first party channel. But no matter where I go, I know that Samsung is going to be there for me and create this wonderful alliance I have with the brand. I always like to wrap up by shining a light on some of the big wins of our guests, those war stories where you put out a fire or built something uniquely difficult. Jill, could you share a story where your team faced significant hurdles and how you overcame them?
One story one really formative learning for me and the fabulous team that I was very fortunate to work with at the time and to help lead. This was early 2020. COVID was very much impacting all Americans. Everyone was stuck at home. Fortunately, we did have at Target the drive up capability, which was very fortuitous that we launched right prior to COVID. And that just allowed for a layer of safety and ease and fulfillment during a time where going in store, picking up products was no longer feeling good for consumers, right? Thus, inventory in areas like hand sanitizer, soap, items that people were clamoring for. If you recall, there were incredible lines and people just in stores, sharp elbows working to get the last bottle of Purell. People were making hand sanitizer at home. Like things were just unhinged, right? And so the consumer didn't know who to turn to from a retailer brand or a brand standpoint to say, how do I get these products that make me feel safe and that allow me to feel like myself and my family can be slightly more at ease during this really unprecedented time? We didn't have a lot of inventory like Walmart, like Costco, like Amazon, right? Everyone was short on hand sanitizer and soap. And so that was very much a close cross-functional effort with myself as the owner of the digital beauty business, my merchants who are fabulous and who were in the negotiation trenches with these big and small companies just to figure out how we procure said products for our consumer. And so through a lot of that hard work, we also optimized our search algorithm and got in there and said, people are, the number one search term at Target is Purell. This was a true story for some time. We then had to manually intervene and say, we don't have Purell brand, but we have hand sanitizer. And here is the hand sanitizer that we have. And even as Christmas came through in 2020, we had these mini Christmas hand sanitizers that are meant to kind of latch onto your keychain, right? Or your purse. And those just flew, as you can imagine, out of stock. And so my point is, I think moments like that, as a person who works in retail and e-commerce, where you don't have the product to support the consumer is scared and they don't know where to turn, and you hold the responsibility of confidence and safety and ease, it makes for a really just, again, formative learning. And so I, again, am just so fortunate to have had such a fabulous team, and just that learning I'll never forget. It's very core to who I am, and it made me a more adaptable, resilient leader and just thinker. You always have to be on your toes. You never know what tomorrow will hold.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it is so common that I'm talking to leaders who see it as their mission to protect us, consumers, from irresponsible, sloppy, too quick AI adoption. And then, your data is flying around to who God knows where. But it's nice to remember that, yeah, there are moments where we can feel physically safe thanks to the products and the crazy logistics that are happening, let alone when it's an unprecedented pandemic. So on behalf of probably a lot of people out there, thank you, Jill. Yeah, that's really special. Lastly, there are senior managers watching this who will become the next cohort of leaders. What career advice can you offer them?
Well, first of all, I find the senior manager level to actually be some of the most influential, if not the most influential layer of leadership that I've either taken on myself in my career. And as I look back and I say, at what point was I doing the work, influencing the work, and then seeing the outcomes, full stop? That might have been the time actually where I had all of that going for me at once. So what I would say is actually not only in this moment in time, in this level and role and title, leverage that ability to get the work done and to feel the benefit of having firsthand impact for your company, your brand, your consumer, because it's real that the higher you go, actually, you're doing less of the work and you're feeling less of the firsthand impact. You are dealing more with, and these are great things, by the way, right? Team leadership, strategic visioning, political influencing internally, matrix, what have you. So you lose a lot of that. And so I would just say, first of all, be excited as much as you can about where you are, because I promise the benefit, you'll look back and you'll be glad that you have the experience and that you made such a formative impact. I'm a big proponent of change. So I have moved companies, I have moved to different cities, and none of that at the time felt entirely comfortable, perhaps, right? Or traditional in the sense that you maybe stick around for some, who knows, kind of duration of time that feels, accessible, right? I'm a big proponent of the right opportunity at the right time, and you jump for it and you take the leap and you make educated risks. Staying at the same company, there are a lot of benefits to that. I won't pretend that there are not. However, I think in this day and age, change and innovation, the fast pace of what the consumer is looking for when they're shopping anything across the world, like, you have to learn rapidly. So you won't get that staying at the same company, is my point of view.
Well said. Well said. But glad to have, someone who has gone through that in the trenches when the next pandemic comes around. I don't have any wood near me to knock, but you get what I'm trying to say.
I got you, Rich. I got some wood right here.
That's all the time we have. Jill, thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week as we uncover more of the evolving retail landscape and understand the consensus voice of its leaders, because above all else, VOX wins.